Trinidad's first Indian prime minister went from prison cell to state funeral, while his $15 million legacy sparked secrets nobody expected. Basdeo Panday died on January 1, 2024 at age 90, surrounded by his family in Jacksonville, Florida. But his story is way bigger than just being a politician who passed away. This man broke barriers, changed history, and faced corruption charges that landed him in a maximum security prison. He built a political empire worth millions, helped transform a country, and left behind a family that includes 4 daughters who did something at his funeral that shocked the entire Caribbean. The details about his wealth, his legal battles, and what really happened in those final years tell a story about power, money, and family that most people never heard. This isn't your typical politician biography. This is about how someone went from being the grandson of indentured servants to running an entire country and everything that came with it, including the scandals. Basdeo Panday was born May 25, 1933 in a neighborhood called Kunuk in Street Julian Village, Prince's Town, Trinidad, and his family didn't come from money or power. His parents and grandparents were immigrants from British India who came to Trinidad as indentured laborers under the Indian indenture system. Think about what that means. His family was brought from India to work on sugar plantations, basically under contract that was barely better than slavery. They worked the land for other people, lived in poverty, and had almost nothing. But Panday's maternal grandparents came from a farming village called Lekmanpur in the Azamgarh district of Uttar Pradesh in India, and he visited that village on a state trip to India in 1997, where he met extended family members and donated 1.5 million Indian rupees to help develop the village. That shows you how far he came from those humble beginnings. Panday grew up poor, but he was smart. He went to school at New Grant Government Primary School and later Presentation College in San Fernando, where he got his Cambridge School certificate. After finishing school, he worked weighing sugarcane at an estate near his hometown. Then he became a primary school teacher and also worked as a civil servant, taking notes at the magistrate's court. But Panday wanted more than that life. In 1957, he left Trinidad and went to the United Kingdom to study. He got a diploma in drama from the London School of Dramatic Art in 1960 and a law degree in 1962 from Inns of Court of Law. He even got a science degree in economics from the University of London in 1965. While studying in England, he worked all kinds of jobs to support himself. He was a construction worker, a clerk, and an electrician. He even acted in a couple of movies, including one called 9 Hours to Rama in 1963, where he played a laundryman. When Panday came back to Trinidad in 1965, everything started to change. He became a lawyer, but he didn't just want to make money for himself. He cared about workers and poor people. He got involved in the labor movement and became a key leader in the All Trinidad Sugar and General Workers Trade Union, where he fought for workers' rights. People loved him because he had natural charisma, and he wasn't afraid to stand up to the powerful plantation owners and business people. In 1973, he became President General of that union and held that position until 1995. His work in the labor movement made him famous in Trinidad, especially among the Indian community, who made up a huge part of the sugar workers. Politics was the next step. Panday co-founded several political parties, including the United Labor Front, the National Alliance for Reconstruction, and finally, the United National Congress, which became his main vehicle for power. The big breakthrough came in 1986 when the National Alliance for Reconstruction, led by Anna Robinson, won the general elections for the first time that the governing party had changed since independence in 1962. Panday was part of that government, but things fell apart fast. He accused Robinson of autocracy and discrimination, and Robinson eventually expelled Panday and some supporters from the party in 1988. That's when Panday formed the United National Congress in 1989 and started building his own political base. The moment that changed everything came in 1995. Patrick Manning, who was Prime Minister at the time, called an early election, and the election ended with the PM and UNC holding 17 seats each and the NAR holding 2 seats. Panday made a deal with the NAR and formed a coalition government. Just like that, he became Prime Minister. He was the first person of Indian descent and the first Hindu to hold the office of Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. That was massive. For the Indian community in Trinidad, which makes up around 38% of the population, this was proof that they had finally arrived politically. For generations, they had been treated as second-class citizens, and now one of their own was running the country. Panday served as Prime Minister from 1995 to 2001. During that time, he tried to fix a lot of problems. The economy was struggling, there were racial tensions between the Indian and African communities, and corruption was everywhere. Panday's supporters say he did a lot of good things like improving education and healthcare and trying to make the government more fair for Indians. His critics say he was corrupt and favored his own people over others. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, like it usually is with politicians. But what we know for sure is that Panday was charismatic, funny, and tough. He had a saying that became famous: "If you see me in a lion fighting, don't feel sorry for me, feel sorry for the lion." That tells you everything about his personality. But the corruption allegations started piling up. The biggest scandal was about a bank account in London. In September 2002, Panday was charged under the Integrity in Public Life Act for failing to declare the contents of a bank account in London for the years 1997, 1998, and 1999. The account was at National Westminster Bank and had about $250,000 in it. The law said that public officials had to declare all their assets to the Integrity Commission so the government could make sure they weren't getting rich through corruption. Panday said the account belonged to his wife Oma and that it was for their children's education. Later he said it was for heart surgery. Then he said it was a scholarship from a businessman named Lawrence Dupree, but he didn't know about it because in Hindu families the wife handles the finances. None of those stories sounded very believable. In March 2006, Panday was found guilty by Chief Magistrate Sherman McNichols and sentenced to 2 years in prison. He was also fined in order to pay the state $284,350, which was the total sum in the undisclosed London bank account. Panday actually went to jail. He spent time at the maximum security prison in Aruca, Trinidad. This was huge news. A former prime minister sitting in a prison cell. His supporters said it was all political, that the PM government was using the courts to destroy him. His enemies said justice was finally catching up with the corrupt politician. The whole thing was messy and dramatic, but here's where it gets interesting. On March 20, 2007, the Court of Appeal overturned the conviction based on the possibility that he may not have received a fair trial. The 3 judges said there was a real possibility of bias by the chief magistrate. Information came out that linked Chief Magistrate McNichols to a multi-million-dollar land deal and a company associated with one of the main witnesses in the Panday trial. There were also allegations that the PM government had hired private investigators to dig up dirt on Panday and rush the charges for political reasons. The whole case fell apart. A retrial was ordered, but in 2012, Magistrate Marcia Murray ruled that the Integrity Commission had failed to comply with the law and discharged all charges against Panday. After 10 years of legal battles, Panday walked away a free man. There were other corruption charges related to the construction of Piarco International Airport. Panday and his wife Oma were accused of receiving £25,000 as a bribe from contractors. In March 2023, the Director of Public Prosecutions discontinued those charges, and Panday was finally cleared of everything. Whether he was actually corrupt or just a victim of political persecution depends on who you ask. What we know is that the cases were so badly handled that they couldn't stick in court. Now let's talk about the money. Reports about Panday's net worth vary wildly. Some sources estimated his net worth at $1 million to $6 million, while other reports threw out numbers as high as $70 million, though those seem unreliable. The truth is nobody knows exactly how much money Panday had. He made income from being a lawyer, from politics, and probably from investments and business deals. Politicians in Trinidad, especially ones who served as prime minister for 6 years, tend to accumulate wealth one way or another. The title mentions $15 million, and that's probably a reasonable estimate for someone in his position, though we can't verify the exact number. What we do know is that Panday lived well. He had property in Trinidad, including his residence at Bryan's Gate in Philippines. He traveled. He supported his family, but he wasn't flashy like some politicians. He didn't drive around in super expensive cars or throw money around publicly. Part of that might have been his personality, and part of it might have been smart after all those corruption charges. Either way, the man had resources. His family life was interesting too. Panday was married to Oma Panday and had 4 daughters named Nyala, Mikola, Nicola, and Vastala. Nyala was born to his first wife Norma Panday, who died in 1981. Oma became his second wife, and they stayed together until his death. The couple had strong religious beliefs, and Panday talked about how his faith helped him deal with tough times. He also got an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from the University of Trinidad and Tobago in November 2000. 19, which showed that despite all the legal troubles, people still respected what he accomplished. The daughter who became most visible was Mikola. She accompanied her father to public events and gatherings in recent years and became the face of the Panday family. On May 25, 2019, which was Panday's birthday, Mikola formed a new political party called the Patriotic Front after leaving the ANC. Her father supported her new party and even became campaign manager. The party pulled out of the 2020 general election, saying they didn't have enough time to organize, but it showed that Mikola was trying to continue her father's political legacy. People saw her as the heir to his movement. When Panday died, his family was with him. Mikola said exactly a month before his death, the family traveled abroad for medical treatment and never thought their father wouldn't be coming back home. According to his brother Subhas Panday, his cause of death was pneumonia. Mikola said her father never complained of feeling unwell because he didn't want anyone to worry, and he continued being charismatic and charming until the very end. She remembered a moment when a doctor asked him how he was feeling, and he replied, "If I was feeling well, I wouldn't be here." That was typical Panday, always making jokes even when things were serious. Trinidad gave him a state funeral, which was a big deal. His body was flown back to Trinidad and Tobago and lay in state at the rotunda of the Red House starting January 5th with a condolence book for guests to sign. Government officials and dignitaries paid tribute. His final rites were done per Hindu customs, and it was the first Hindu state funeral in Trinidad and Tobago. On January 9th, his funeral procession began at his residence in Bryan's Gate, Philippine, where the religious aspect was conducted, then proceeded to the Southern Academy for the Performing Arts in San Fernando. For the main ceremony, the funeral itself became historic for another reason. Panday's daughters Mikola Vastala Nyala and Nicola broke Hindu tradition by performing the final rites of lighting their father's funeral pyre. In Hindu culture, it's traditionally a male relative, usually a son, who lights the funeral pyre, because people believe the soul only achieves moksha, or freedom from the cycle of rebirth, when a male performs that ritual. But Panday didn't have sons, only daughters. His daughters took lit torches, some crying, some stoic, and did their duty for their father. This sent shockwaves through the Caribbean and even internationally. It showed that things were changing, that daughters could honor their fathers just as much as sons. It was a powerful moment that said something about both Panday's progressive views and his daughter's strength. President Christine Kangaloo said in a statement that Panday was a giant of a man who led the country with passion and compassion. Prime Minister Keith Rowley said Panday made an indelible mark on the nation, having served so long and in so many different ways. Opposition leader Kamla Persad Bissessar, who replaced Panday as UNC leader, said he was a great leader who spent most of his years helping the oppressed and poor. Even people who disagreed with his politics respected what he accomplished. Panday's last wish, according to his brother, was for a piece of land he inherited from his grandmother in his hometown of Street Julian to be developed into a home for battered women and orphans. That tells you something about what mattered to him in the end. Not money or power, but helping people who needed it. Whether that wish gets carried out remains to be seen, but it's what he wanted. Panday's legacy is complicated. On one hand, he broke massive barriers. He proved that someone from the Indian community, someone whose grandparents came as indentured laborers, could rise to the highest office in the land. He fought for workers' rights, stood up to the establishment, and gave voice to people who felt left out. On the other hand, he faced serious corruption allegations, spent time in jail, and left office under a cloud of scandal. His supporters see him as a hero who was persecuted by his enemies. His critics see him as a corrupt politician who got away with it because the cases were mishandled. The truth about his $15 million fortune, or whatever it actually was, will probably never be fully known. The details of his business deals, his investments, and where all his money came from and went died with him. What we're left with is a story about a man who lived 90 years, saw incredible highs and devastating lows, and changed his country forever. His four daughters carry on his name, and Mikola especially seems determined to keep his political movement alive. Whether she'll succeed is another question. What stands out most is how much controversy followed this man throughout his life. From labor strikes to political battles to prison to vindication to a state funeral where his daughters defied tradition, Panday never did anything quietly. He was loud, bold, and unapologetic. That's why people either loved him or hated him. There was no middle ground with Basdeo Panday. He made you pick a side. In the end, Trinidad lost one of its most important political figures. The Indian community lost a champion. His family lost a husband, father, and grandfather. And the Caribbean lost one of its most colorful and controversial leaders. Whether you think he was a hero or a villain, you can't deny that Basdeo Panday mattered. His story from indentured servant grandchild to prime minister, from prison cell to state funeral, is the kind of life that doesn't happen very often. And that $15 million fortune, whether it was more or less, represents not just money but power, influence, and the complicated legacy of someone who spent 90 years fighting for what he believed in even when the whole world seemed against him. Subscribe to see which Caribbean politicians' corruption trial makes Panday's scandal look tame, and what happened to their family fortune.